Hi, we're on ThePapare.com and very privileged to have in Sri Lanka and exclusively with the Papare, Mr. Chris Boyd, the Super Rugby winning coach of the Wellington Hurricanes. He's been with them for 2 seasons and we are really privileged to have him here in Sri Lanka as part of his South Asian work. Chris, welcome to Sri Lanka. How are you liking it so far?
It's great to be here. No, just we've been on holiday in India for a while and coming through Sri Lanka and really looking forward. It's been great.
Weather's a little bit better than Wellington?
I spoke to my daughter at home yesterday and she said it's still only about 12 degrees and it's supposed to be coming into spring. So no, very happy to be here for the weather.
Congratulations, Chris, on your first Super Rugby win in just your second season. How does it feel? What does Wellington feel like to have that first win under their belt? What's it like over there?
Oh, we were disappointed in 2015 to lose the final. Obviously, we were sort of a runaway in the round robin and had a good performance in the semi-final, but didn't get the final right, unfortunately. So we were still pretty grumpy from 2015. And I think when we gave ourselves a chance in 2016 to go in the playoffs, I don't think the boys were going to let it slip again. So there was a great determination to get our first championship, which we were very pleased to do.
Tell us about your transition. You didn't have a couple of good seasons before you moved to the Wellington Hurricanes. Do you applaud their bravery, if I can call it that, to sign you? Or do you think that, hey, this is just what I was going to offer?
No, well, I actually got appointed before the Hurricanes before I had, what was our worst season for the Lions, and that was a really unfortunate season, which, still irritates me a little bit. But we had as coaches, sometimes there's things you can control and you can't. We had a dreadful run of injuries and got through 53 players and had some really key players missing, and we got into a downward spiral and weren't able to get out of it. So that was a massive disappointment for me, but I'm very pleased that the Hurricanes board continued to show faith in my appointment and we were able to get through to a final in 15 and then finally win the final in 16. So, I sort of feel they've repaid their faith in that respect.
You've got some of the best players in the world in your franchise as well, Chris. You've got Dan Coles, you've got Ardis Savea, you've got Victor Vito, you've got Perinara, you've got Ma'anonu and Conrad Smith who've left. You had Corey Jane, Bowden Barrett, also the best player in the world at the moment. How did these guys become the best players in the world? Is it something you had a hand in, or is it something that has progressed over a course of time, or was it something that happened very quickly?
Oh, I think it would be arrogance for anyone to say that they have a total responsibility for somebody's performance. And those boys are all extremely talented players, and we were lucky that we were able to harness that talent and channel it into the right direction. But they're wonderful players and they're great to coach and great to work with. They enjoy each other's company. They have a lot of fun together. And we just needed to create a framework for them to work inside. And as you've identified, if your spine through the middle of the field is particularly strong, then it's a pretty good chance to go through. And those boys have been very good in the last couple of years.
Talent trumps training is a phrase that's thrown around. Would you agree with that, especially given the group of players you have?
No, I think in all my time in sport and probably the last 10 years in professional sport, I don't think anybody's achieved just on talent. So I think you need a degree of talent to get your foot in the door, but at the end of the day, Dane Coles is the hardest working hooker in the world probably. He just is relentless with his work and his attention to detail, and so he's a naturally gifted athlete with a massive work rate as well. So I think, I don't know anybody who's just got there on talent. They're all hard-working players.
You've got obviously different levels of players that you have to work with as a coach. You're working with the highest level of players now. And is that easier than working with players a few notches down? What are the differences between this level and a few levels down, which is what is relevant here in Sri Lanka?
Well, I think we always go back to getting the basics right. So I think, anybody who thinks that it's the fancy stuff that wins games or championships or get you there is wrong. So we have a relentless attitude towards execution of basic skills really well. And I don't think it matters at what level. You can't do enough of that skill execution under pressure. And then it's just a matter of, getting some momentum and getting a roll on and getting everybody focused in the right direction and doing the same thing. But I think that high levels of relentless work rate is really important.
So basic skills, even at the All Blacks level, how much time is spent on basic skills? Because you don't keep knowing how to pass or being able to pass just because you're an All Black. You have to keep training.
No, absolutely. So, the backs and the forwards, we'd practice catch and pass under pressure in different scenarios, under fatigue, under pressure. We'd do it every week. So, and a substantial time every week. So that core basic skills under pressure with decision making is a very key part of our training program.
How do you coach decision making, especially at a lower age, Chris? What is some tips that you can give coaches about that?
I think you've just got to keep painting different pictures for them, and often it's not telling them the answer, but letting them find the solution themselves. And so they'll start to recognise a picture and see what the potential outcome or the result is, and it's just repetition. And so we talk about where you look and how you interpret those pictures, but at the end of the day, to interpret those pictures under pressure, I think is the key part of the game.
You were talking to us in your seminar with the coaches about how if something is not going well, you'll just have to work players hard, and you'll tell the boys that okay, this next 15 minutes is going to be 100% effort, but it's just 15 minutes, Chris. So do you think A, that's enough, and B, if you work them harder for longer, does that mean you'll always get the best results?
No, I think, as I've said to the coaches here today, I think freshening players up to play and giving them time to recover post game, I think, is really crucial. So that balance of getting your work and your learnings and trading off against rest and recovery, I think, is vital. And I know I was an amateur coach for a long period of time, and we always get enthusiastic about not wasting any time, but sometimes less is best and sometimes rest is best. So I think as a coach, there's a lot of balancing to be done there.
In a team with as many stars as you have, how do you keep the rest of them hungry? How do you keep the rest of them realizing that, okay, if you have to pass the ball to Nonu, how do you keep them happy doing that?
Well, it's always team first, and so some guys have different roles in the team. And we have guys in the roster that go through all the trainings in the year and never get on a team sheet, and that's just professional sport, and they've just got to suck it up, and they know that their contribution to the team might look slightly different. So it might be providing good opposition analysis, or it might be providing opposition at training, or it might be contesting stuff, or it might be producing stuff. But everybody has a role, and as long as everybody's focused on doing the best for the team and not for themselves, then that's a significant way to getting a good team culture sorted out.
And what's the role of a coach in the team culture? Do they set it, or do they adapt to what they see in the dressing room?
No, I think you can provide boundaries for the culture to grow, but at the end of the day, the history of your club, the senior players, your connection emotionally, and even potentially spiritually, that those connections I think are really important, and there's got to be a common drive and a common belief and a common goal. And if you've got a common goal and everybody buys into it, I think that's very powerful. So we often talk about belief in the system, so everyone believes what we're doing is absolutely right, and that we trust each other to deliver their part. So if each person gets their cog right, then the machine will run.
You say spiritual. It's not a word I've heard often used in a sporting context, Chris. And you also say common goal. But common goal is a little bit more complex than we just want to win a championship or we want to win the next game. It's a little bit more than that. What is it in the Hurricanes?
It is, and finding that is really important, and some people will play for in a professional level anyway. Some will be playing for the money, some will be playing for their family, some will be playing to prove a point to themselves, and some will be to prove a point to other people. Some will be playing because they just love playing. So rolling that all in together into a meaningful direction can be challenging. But at the end of the day, they're all highly competitive, and the desire to win and the level of commitment and the level that you're prepared to go to get that result is really important. If you don't have that common connection, I don't think you can drive each other to the level you need to get the outcome that you really want.
John Kerwin was here a few years ago when he was touring for the Asiad with Japan, and I asked him why that 87 All Black team was so much better than everyone else. And his immediate answer was that they drove each other really hard and they were hard on each other. So if John Schuster gave him a pass and he dropped it, he'd hear about it for a while. Is that the sort of culture that you need sometimes? How much do you become a taskmaster? How much are you a mentor?
I think the adherence to standards is often controlled by the senior players, and I think they're absolutely crucial, and so they become your disciples in many ways around what's important. And I think setting a very high bar and not being prepared to accept anything less, I think, is a massively important part of success of a team. And again, people have got to understand why that bar has been set so high and what the implications and what the consequences of not delivering are. And again, I'll come back to the fact that that's a lot of that is self-regulation from the players.
And you said disciples, which means almost a chosen few. But how do you battle the allegations of perhaps favoritism within the team when you have chosen a few and obviously chosen a few?
Yeah, I think that disciples might not quite be the word, but at the end of the day, by seniority or skill or responsibility, there'll be people that are bigger influences in the team than others, and I think it's really important that the whole team's aligned into a common goal. But I think it's really important that those players in your leadership group or your senior group or whatever you choose to call them are really committed to what you're trying to do and are prepared to stand up for that, and I think that's crucial.
You've been in Sri Lanka a very short time. You've met most of the coaches, though. What do you think that we as coaches in Sri Lanka need to focus on?
Oh, it's a little bit hard to tell straight away. I mean, I got a feeling that the enthusiasm amongst the coaches is fantastic, and it's always rewarding to come back into an amateur environment and see the raw enthusiasm of coaching, which can be highly rewarding. But I think we get so bound up with wanting to do the best we can and get as much learning in as we can and achieving as much as we can, that I think we need to be really careful about rest and recovery and fun and stuff like that as well. So more is not always better, and I think sometimes less is best. So getting some real clarity around what's important for your team to do the best they can and delivering that in a meaningful manner around rest and recovery, I think, is really important.
What's next for you in the Cairns, Chris?
Well, I'll have a week on the south coast, recovering from a month in India, and then I'll head back to the Hurricanes, and the boys will be in a couple of weeks' time. We've got 7 guys away with the All Blacks and 6 guys away with the Maori All Blacks and 3 away with the Barbarians. So we're a pretty depleted squad in the very early parts, but we'll all come together over between sort of the start of December and the end of January. Guys will sift in at different times, and then we have a very short time to get a nice sharp focus to go and play our first game against the Sunwolves in Tokyo.
Well, it looks like it's going to be a packed season as well. Chris Boyd, really privileged to have you here in Sri Lanka. I'm a Crusaders fan myself, but then what can you do? Nobody's perfect. Huh? Thanks a lot for joining us and have a great time here in Sri Lanka.
Absolute privilege, and thank you very much for having me.